We're back at COP, and we're back at our COP newsletter, and we actually have a real expert today. I'm very happy that you're here, Akshat, because I want to, of course, debrief what we've seen this week. It's day 5, it's Friday. We're kind of taking stock of the week. In your view, and you've been here from day 1 covering this pretty much 24/7, what is the highlight from week 1? I also want to ask you, are you more optimistic than we were on Monday? It does seem that there's momentum going into this thing.
So I would say highlights are we got a big net zero pledge from India. That was kind of not expected.
And you weren't expecting that, right?
No, it was a good surprise. We got pledges on methane, a sort of a weak pledge on coal, a pledge on deforestation, and we got a financial commitment, with a big number.
Around 140 trillion,
yes,
right?
But all of these are a little bit unclear. So the India net zero, it's not clear if it's all greenhouse gases because carbon dioxide is only 75% of the problem. With deforestation, we've already had some countries like Indonesia saying, we are not quite sure what the text means. The global methane pledge, we don't know how strictly they'll be able to monitor whether countries are meeting their goals. And with the finance, we're not sure if the $130 trillion will actually go towards green stuff or it's just an idea that has to be turned into action.
Yeah, like it's a whole wall of cash, but how is that going to get implemented and deployed? And actually, you make a very good point, because a lot of the CEOs, but investors that we've spoken to, they say the thing is we're moving from brown into green, but the green space is not very well developed for investment yet. It's very small, and there's a risk that you're creating a huge bubble into this.
Right, and that's the reason why the finance pledge of $100 billion from developed countries to developing countries was crucial. Why, even though it was billion and not trillion, that sum would enable the trillions of private capital to come into those countries. But going back to your point of progress, I think there was progress in the sense that we got an analysis from the International Energy Agency that said if we took all the pledges that came through, and we also got net zero pledges from Nigeria, from Thailand, if we add all those up, we're already looking at warming going down to 1.8 degrees Celsius from 2.1. So that's quite a shift if the pledges are met.
And it's in check. And of course, as I said, we have the voice of reason today joining us. Explain to me, why is it that India, 2070 next year, a lot of people say, well, it seems like it's very down the line, like this is not quick, it's not happening fast enough. But explain the significance of Prime Minister Modi putting a date on this.
So 2 ways to think about this, right? If it is all greenhouse gases, it's actually consistent with what scientists say, because we need to reach net zero carbon dioxide by 2050 and net zero all greenhouse gases by 2070 to keep 1.5 degrees Celsius alive. But the second thing to think about is India's historical emissions are quite small, which means even if you give it the breathing room to have net zero in 2090, it would still not have emitted more than the US or China.
And why is it so important to wrap up week 1? I mean, there's a lot to unpack here, but why is it so important to kind of bridge the gap of financing from rich, developed to underdeveloped? Because I kept hearing this thing of we need to help them. This transition is expensive. Yes. Unless we're all on board, it's not going to happen. Why is it important to bridge this?
Another statistic, right? So 20 countries, the world's top 20 countries, account for 80% of all emissions, right? And the remaining 180 countries account for 20% of the emissions. That inequality is baked into the world that exists. And if you're not able to bridge that inequality through financing, we're not going to be able to get a deal which is going to be a consensus among all countries.
And it's very good you make that context, because a lot of the criticism from climate skeptics at the time is, but it's the rich countries always have pay for everything. Actually, you pay, but you're also polluting the most. So it's something that worth keeping in mind. And of course, that's for week 1, but we still have another week of this.
Yes.
The idea is that we get some kind of text next week with a new unimproved pledge. Are we going to get it?
So I think the next week is going to become a lot more technical. You're going to hear about square brackets. These are undecided terms that negotiators have to come up with.
Sounds complicated. What does
a
it
consensus.
mean?
And they have to deal with actual legal text of Article 6, which will create an international carbon market.
Why is that Article 6 important?
So
we hear it a lot. What's the significance?
So think about what's happening with Article 6 in the sense of forests, right? Most of our forests are in tropical countries. Most tropical countries are less developed. And if you create a financing mechanism through which you could trade carbon, you could value the forests, then you're able to find another route through which money can go from developed countries to developing countries, and that's crucial to be able to meet climate goals.
And the ETS system, of course, where you buy and sell credits to polluters, you say,
yes.
I mean, this is a big thing in Europe. Why would it be a huge breakthrough if we manage to get something that looks like a global solution? Why is this such a huge thing?
So the EU only covers, 5-10% of global emissions, right? The remaining 90% is all broken up into different either no carbon market or, in the case of China, a very weak carbon market. If you get one that's global, it puts a price on carbon, and that really is something that the economists say is the most effective policy to be able to act on climate.
So it would be mega. And of course, on a scale from like Greta, this is all blah, 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 it doesn't work, to Boris Johnson, I feel very pumped out about this. How are you on this communique text? How optimistic are you?
I think that's what makes... If there is anything fun about climate change, that's what makes it fun, which is we are trying to do something, which is what Boris Johnson's saying, honey, he's right. But Greta is right that we're not doing enough. And how we bridge that gap is what climate change and this meeting is all about.
And we're going to see Greta out on the streets today and tomorrow, Saturday, so that should be interesting.
It's going to be a lot of people, I hear.
Well, Akshat, thank you so much for being with us. I love talking to you. And we'll see you next week again, up and running every day covering this. So we appreciate your work.
Thanks for having me.